Guys, what's going on in Ethiopia right now could trigger such a mess. There's two things that could be about to blow, and actually three things that are really, really dangerous. And we're talking about an earthquake swarm that is going as I speak with magnitude 4.9, 4.8, 5.0, and they keep coming around the Fentale Volcano in Ethiopia. But there is something else that could be triggered by all this rumbling. So Fentale is a stratovolcano that has been dormant for over 200 years, and it seems it's waking up. It has been rumbling in the last few months. Cracks have opened, homes have been destroyed, there's a land rise, and now these earthquakes are getting more, and they are getting heavier, larger, like more than 7 to 10 earthquakes just in one day, all in these higher magnitude ranges. And could that rumbling trigger something else that would cause devastation not only in Ethiopia? This would affect Sudan and Egypt, more than 5 million people, close to 6 million people. That could be so messy, guys. What am I talking about? So the earthquakes themselves are already causing trouble. They can be felt in the capital of Addis Ababa. And I want to start with a comment from one of my viewers who lives in the capital of Ethiopia, Addis Ababa. And what that viewer says, it says basically around midnight in my apartment in Addis Ababa, it's vibrating. It's really scary. It lasts for a few seconds, then it goes away, and then it comes back after a few hours again. So this is what the rumbling is, and it's felt in the capital. So that has impacts. But as I said, this could get really, really messy if a monster dam is triggered. And I mean, if a monster dam is breaking by the influence of these earthquakes. And this is a very controversial dam that has just been finished around 2020. It's Africa's largest dam, and it powers dreams of prosperity for Ethiopia, but fears of hunger in Egypt already. So that dam is located approximately 700 kilometers northwest of the capital, Addis Ababa, in the region that is called Benishangul Gumas, and it's along the Blue Nile River. And this dam is the largest in Africa. It's 1,800 meters long. It's 170 meters high with a total volume of 10.4 million cubic meters. And it creates a reservoir that covers 1,875 square kilometers, and it could contain 74 billion cubic meters of water. And this is massive. There's also 2 power stations installed at the foot of the dam. So it's creating a lot of power. So we're not talking about, oh, the earthquakes are hitting something small, a little tiny dam. That's why this is so important, because what could be triggered by this is catastrophic, to say the least. But also, if we have an eruption of Fentale, that alone is bad enough. So guys, we have to talk about this. So the dam. I am talking about the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. And these earthquakes, this high seismic activity, the highest seismic activity in 10 years in Ethiopia, could have an impact on that dam. We're dealing with earthquakes here like high magnitude 4 and even above magnitude 5, and they keep coming. They've been rumbling for days, and we just had another one. Look at this earthquake list. These are just the recent earthquakes. They keep coming. This is what my viewer has reported. It is shaking in the capital of Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa. So the dam that we're speaking about currently holds 60 billion cubic meters of water. That is equivalent with 60 billion tons. So as you can imagine, that is a significant weight on this geologically fragile Earth's crust that we have here in Ethiopia due to the presence of this African rift valley that is present in that area that divides basically the country in half. It's tearing the country in half. So this rift valley makes this region already one of the most earthquake and volcanic prone areas in Africa. And now we have that massive dam there. So right now, what the scientists are saying, what geology professors are saying about the correlation between these earthquakes and the dam, currently they have a moderate impact on the dam due to the distance. They're roughly like 500 kilometers away, but the current ones, they have increased in magnitude. So up to which magnitude could we say the dam is not under heavy threat? That is the big question, because already in 2023 there was an earthquake that was only 100 kilometers away from that dam. It had a magnitude 4.4, so they still considered that weak for the dam. But now we're talking about 4.9, 5.2 magnitudes like this, and we know the impact of earthquakes, even if it's just a jump from 4.2 to 4.4 or 0.1, 0.2, is heavily accelerating the force and the impact of these earthquakes. So if we could see stronger earthquakes closer to the dam, that really could affect that dam. And especially after one thing that happened that is highly discussed, and scientists are fighting about this, the dam is full. The water behind the dam, they have filled it up to the highest level basically. So because of that, it's turning this dam into an explosive water bomb. That's what scientists are calling it. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it will explode immediately if there's higher earthquakes, but the risk will always increase, especially if there's the flood season. So that is during the month of July till September. So now it should be a little bit of less of a risk, but they're filling up the dam to levels. So the fill amount of this dam is highly under dispute. And who's fighting? So basically Egypt is fighting with Ethiopia over this dam. So the fuller this dam is, the more risk it poses should there be a strong earthquake, and should that earthquake damage this dam, right? Then it could be explosive. Aside from the fact that Egypt and Ethiopia are fighting over the water, since that dam exists. So in 2020, when that dam was finished, they started fighting over that. Egypt said, do not fill up that lake behind the dam. We need to reach an agreement first. But let's talk about Fentale again, the volcano that might erupt. And we've seen over the past few days an accelerating earthquake activity that was really alarming. And as I said in the beginning, it has been felt by residents in the capital area. And this seismic activity in this area that is called the Awash region has been shaken at least like by 5 to 6 to 7 earthquakes of magnitude over 4.5 in the last 48 hours alone. So it went up 4.8, 4.9, even some in the 5 region. The problem is we don't really know the exact number of earthquakes because that area is not surveilled as other areas that we're usually talking about, like Iceland, Campi Flegrei in Italy, or Hawaii and stuff like this. They don't have these seismic stations there so that we could really be sure what is exactly going on. So right now on the global seismic networks, we can only identify the largest events. But if there's a microseismic swarm or something like this, it's hard to detect, if it can be detected at all with the infrastructure that is in place currently. So what scientists are suggesting is that the real number of earthquakes in the area is likely in the hundreds, right? So all the people that live there, they're being shaken constantly, and they are reporting, I mean, at least the ones that do have internet, phones and stuff like this, they do report that they feel the shaking. Because of that, the risk that we could see a new volcanic eruption of Fentale in this part of this African rift zone is now considered higher than before, because of what is the source, what is the most likely cause of these earthquakes? Magma. And it's never good if magma is causing earthquakes, because then we know that magma is traveling, and it's likely traveling to the surface. They think that these earthquakes are the cause of a shallow magma intrusion. That means magma is intruding into areas, into higher areas. Magma's moving. If magma's moving through rocks and through caprock layers, of course, this makes it rumble, because it has to break rocks. It has to make way. It's like mining a new tunnel. You need explosives to build that tunnel, and that's what magma is doing. That's why the earth above it is shaking. So if magma is intruding into the higher layers, it could easily find a way to the surface and cause a volcanic eruption. So scientists are saying the people in this area should really be on alert. But I have heard reports from my viewers that live in the area. You said, yeah, you know, some people that live there have been informed by authorities to some extent, but they're saying, well, we live here, we've always lived here, we're staying here. So the level of basic education about this hasn't been large and hasn't been going on for a long period of time, so that people would really be aware what it means, what could really happen to them. And many people live off that land, so I don't blame them. What's their perspective? Where would they go? It's not that the government is offering them like a settlement somewhere else and it's being paid for. So you have the choice. I leave into uncertainty because something might happen that eventually will not happen. Okay, it could happen. But on the other hand, you can go on with your life. If it's not happening, it's the right decision, right? But if it is happening, of course, it could be devastating, so to speak. So since early September 2024, basically, the earthquakes kept coming and kept shaking the area between the Fentale volcano and the Dauphin volcano in this Awash area. Basically, that's central Ethiopia, and it's roughly about 150 kilometers away from the capital, Addis Ababa, and they're feeling the rumbling there. So several quakes had a magnitude of 5 or even above 5 and have already destroyed many homes there. And in addition to that, we've seen ground cracks opening up all over a sudden, really like rifting through the earth. And some of them also began to erupt hot steam and hot water. And why is that hot? Because something hot is underneath. So some of these eruptions were in the form of small geysers or steam explosions, localized. But what is concerning is that we do have some satellite data, what is happening with the ground, and the ground is rising up. It has risen by up to 30 centimeters over a length of around 10 kilometers in this same area. And we know what it means if the ground is rising. It's a magma chambers filling up, getting ready for an eruption. If something's filling up underneath and expanding, of course the land is rising. So a land rise in combination with earthquake swarms and with higher earthquakes, that is a problem, or might be a problem, and might be an indication that the threat of an imminent eruption is heavily increasing. And now we've had these increased activity in just the last few days. So probably the main suspect here that might cause this is the Fentale volcano. Fentale is a stratovolcano, so it's basically what you think of if you hear the word volcano. It has this huge mountain, this huge crater cone, like Vesuvius in Italy, for example. So it's not a volcano like a fissure erupting volcano like we see in Iceland, although we could see fissure eruptions around Fentale, which makes it even more unpredictable where we will see something. And we've just seen in the local news there, basically today, that people went out on the streets in the capital area, like we remember in Italy last May when the big earthquake swarm happened there. People were shaken up and they're like, what is happening? So of course they were scared. They got out of their homes and out on the street. And you know, I've seen comments underneath my last videos, well, how are people living there in these areas? The homes that they're building, aren't they like one story? Are they really in danger? Well, guys, you have to look at the capital, Addis Ababa. This is a sort of modern town, right? It's multi-story buildings. It has some high rises. So this is not a small settlement. This is a really big town, a city. So people, of course, are worried. You see it here on the pictures, all these apartment buildings and stuff like this. It's not just like many people of you described, some like local farmers living in some small huts or something like this. No, this is a real threat for the population that lives there. So that's why just yesterday, 5.0 magnitude was recorded in these Awash region, and I'll show you the maps here where we've seen all these epicenters of these earthquakes around Fentale, right underneath the crater of Fentale, but also spreading out to the east a little bit more. And of course, as I said, it's affecting the capital. The people are feeling the shaking and they're worried. So what is happening today and yesterday and the days before is really ranking among the most significant seismic activities that we have even recorded in recent weeks. Although even the recent weeks have already been the most significant in 10 years. Just on December 29th, they registered 7 large tremors. And again, there might have been more smaller ones. Could have been a large swarm. We don't know. But definitely 7 of them already on one day is showing us that we have an active seismic period going on there, a seismic swarm. And the epicenter was located approximately only 14 kilometers away from Awash town. You see it here on the map. And this has also been confirmed, that's what's in the local newspapers, by the director of the Geophysics and Space Science at Addis Ababa University. And he has confirmed that the seismic activity in the Awash Fentale region has been recurrent over the past week and pretty intense over the past week. So he said the tremor that we've just seen, the 5.0, he confirms it was felt in the capital city of Addis Ababa. But we already know that because, and this is so great that I have viewers that live there. So hi to all of you, and thanks for giving me this information. It's absolutely awesome to get the local insight. So please keep posting, keep feeding us with your knowledge, with your insights, what you're feeling, what you're experiencing. And of course, the director further explained that, of course, the tectonic activity that we're seeing in this area, particularly the movements in these basaltic rock formations of these layers, drives these earthquakes as well. But, shortly before Christmas on December 23rd, there have been tremors right near the Fentale mountain in the Metihara area. So it is rumbling around the volcano. And then, it was followed up by even stronger earthquakes, like 4.9, so almost 5. And again, what we hear from another professor who is the head of the seismology department at that university, he has explained that if they are experiencing earthquakes magnitude 5 or higher, that has definitely the potential to cause substantial damage. And he really said and stressed that such events pose significant risks to infrastructure and to human safety, particularly in regions with vulnerable populations and structures. But let's get back to the dam again. We've talked about the earthquakes. We will talk also further about the volcanic risk, what happens if there's a volcanic eruption of Fentale. But I want to quickly go back to the water, to the dam, because there are safety concerns that I think we should address. So first of all, it's that massive size of that dam, and they have filled it rapidly. They have done that in a very short period of time. So that has raised some red flags about engineering safety, especially since the region is seismically active, right? As evident by the recent earthquakes that we've seen near the Fentale volcano. So if there is a structural failure of that dam, it could result in catastrophic flooding downstream. But where would that be? That would be in Sudan, because that's the closest downstream country from that dam. It's basically 15 kilometers from the Sudan border. So Sudan would be hit first by a dam failure. So what would happen? A massive uncontrolled water release would come from that. Right now, some say 65, some say even 74 billion cubic meter water reservoir. So that uncontrolled water would of course cause massive flash flooding and devastate cities that are nearby, cities like Khartoum and low-lying agricultural areas along the Blue Nile. But there's other infrastructure that could be damaged by this as well, because there's other dams. We have the Osiris Dam, the Morova Dam, and irrigation systems could be damaged or, worst case scenario, completely destroyed, which would accelerate the problem. So let's talk casualties. They could be extremely high if that flash flood comes down there, because there's a lot of densely populated areas near the riverbanks. But also let's talk about Egypt. Egypt is farther downstream, and we know Egypt has already had a fight about this dam because of the availability of water. They're depending on the Nile River for 90% of their fresh water. So flooding could overwhelm another dam, the Aswan High Dam, and that could then potentially lead to a failure of that dam. And that would even compound that disaster even further. And then, of course, after all that, water shortages would follow. And that would affect agriculture, drinking water, and hydro power generation for millions of people. So the ripple effect that we could see here from earthquakes, volcanic eruption, dam breaking. So there's disasters in the making here in this area, so that we really, guys, we should closely monitor this. And of course, I will closely monitor this because, you know, in my previous videos, we talked about what happens if there is an eruption of Fentale, which is bad enough. But an eruption of Fentale could come along with earthquakes that would happen before the eruption, stronger earthquakes. So could that ripple down? But maybe it doesn't even need a volcanic eruption. Maybe the tectonic activity could already be bad enough to trigger something. So should they, or I have to say, shouldn't they decrease the water levels behind that dam to make it not so vulnerable? The Egyptians say yes, but it seems there's no common consensus right now. And you know, the East African rift system consists of several volcanoes, and the problem is that all these volcanoes remain understudied if we compare them to many other volcanic areas. What we know now, because luckily over the past 2 decades there have been multidisciplinary studies of geologists, seismologists that have found out about a rich history of volcanic activity and unrest in this densely populated East African rift system. They just haven't been experienced in people's lifetimes or haven't been recorded, so they date way back. But what they found out has provided new insights into the influence of this rift dynamic and the magmatism that can come with it. If this is being torn apart, it can open fissures. Magma finds an easier way to come to the surface. We see this in Iceland. There's 2 tectonic plates that are moving away from each other, and that's why we see a lot of eruptions and volcanoes in this area. So thankfully, there is some kind of raised awareness of volcanic hazards in this region, and slowly we see a shift driving from potential crisis response towards reducing disaster risks. But so much more is needed, a much more extensive surveillance system. And that's what the scientists are saying. There's a lack of institutional and human capacity in this sub-Saharan Africa. So it means that the baseline data that we would need are sparse, and therefore mitigating these geohazards remains very, very challenging. And that's why the problem with the Fentale volcano is that it is located in a densely populated region, and it is near critical infrastructure like the Awash River and, as mentioned, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. So an eruption at the Fentale volcano could displace hundreds of thousands of people locally, and it could disrupt the lives of millions of people that are in this region. So especially millions, especially if it impacts water sources or triggers like secondary hazards like earthquakes and the flooding that could come from impact on these dams. Let's imagine what happens if the Fentale volcano erupts. The number of people that would be affected, of course, depends on the scale of the eruption and on the extent of the volcanic hazards, like where is the lava flowing, how much lava is flowing, where is the ashfall going, how much ashfall is there, and how intense were the earthquakes. Are we done talking, guys? I guess not. And how intense were the earthquakes? I'm not getting it done here. Okay, I'm trying again. And how intense were the earthquakes? So the local population is at risk the most. That's the Metihara town. It's located about 19 miles, that's roughly 30 kilometers from the Fentale volcano, and the population of that town is big. It's roughly 50 to 60,000 people. So imagine that town would be affected by the volcano. Then we have Awash town, that is a little bit further away, approximately 31 miles, that's 50 kilometers. It has a population of 15 to 20,000 people. And then of course, there's the surrounding rural areas with the farmers. So there's a lot of farming communities who depend on the Awash River for their livelihoods and its irrigation. So, but also ashfall from a potential volcanic eruption on their fields and on their agricultural areas could be devastating, could lead to food shortages and stuff like this. So the estimated rural population is large, guys. So it's not only the cities, the rural population is larger. It's like 50 to 100,000 people. And these people are also probably, in my opinion, the ones that say, we live here, we don't want to leave. This is our livelihood. Where would we go? It's not that the government says, well, you're farming that many acres, I'm giving you land somewhere else, right? The whole Awash Valley, that's part of the region, how it's called, is a major agricultural zone, but also an industrial zone. So if that is affected, it could displace several hundred thousands of people that are depending on farming, grazing lands, and the water systems. I'm having my dog across from me looking at me, and it's hard not to laugh. I have a lot of outtakes in this video. I'll put them at the end of the video, so stay with me, guys. Don't leave this video yet, and leave it a like, please. If you don't leave it now, it helps me to get more views through the YouTube algorithm. So stay till the end. I'll have some goodies at the end. But you know, let's talk about something else. There's cities further downstream. There's the city of Nasret, Adama, it's also called, 170,000 residents. There is a city called Debre Zeit, Bishoftu, 100,000 plus residents. And of course, the capital, Addis Ababa, 5.2 million residents. I have to take a break and show you the dog because this is hilarious. This is how he's staring at me, but he has pulled more stunts. So at the end, guys, 5.2 million people could face air quality disruption, right? Air quality issues with all the ash that is coming, water contamination if ashfall and chemical pollutants spread and cover the rivers and their water reservoirs. But also, as mentioned already with the dam, there could be broader effects on other countries like Sudan and Egypt. Talking about the contamination and disruption of the Awash River and the Blue Nile, that could affect millions and millions of people downstream who depend on that river for drinking water, agriculture, and hydropower. So we don't even have to have the dam break, right? The ash pollution could already be a huge factor. So estimated total population impact in the danger zone around Fentale up to 200 to 300,000 people within 50 kilometers, 30 miles around that volcano. And that is a lot. That is highly densely populated. And I know many of you have said, well, we didn't think that about Ethiopia. Well, yes, that's how it is. And the regional impact could affect several million people, as we just said, with water contamination. So the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is at risk from these earthquakes. Fentale could erupt and make things even worse. If both happens, worst case scenario, right? So I will keep you updated about this, guys. Now I have a dog sitting on my laptop, probably changing my screen. So Rudi just sits there and looks outside because he's seen bunnies earlier. And I've got Eddie coming and Apollo slurping, slurping underneath me. He's just drinking water. And speaking of Apollo, guys, thank you so much for supporting my channel with buying me coffees on my buymeacoffee.com website and buying me supers. So if you'd like to support my channel, everything goes towards Apollo's monstrous vet bill right now. He's fighting cancer. We had to go to the United States to university to get radiation treatment. So he's getting better. The side effects are kicking in right now. That's why you heard him during the video. He was at my feet and he's gurgling a bit. That is Rudi, my assistant. But yeah, his assistance right now is not so good because he's changing my screen. So I'm showing you a few outtakes at the end of this video, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your support. And if I don't see you before the end of this year, happy, prosperous, and safe New Year, guys. See you soon. Guys, I would like to start my video, and you need to get off the table because I cannot put my tripod here and film. It will be really nice. The bunnies are gone. There is no dinner. There is nobody. Stop shaking my equipment, Rudi. It's already quite creative because I need to have that higher. I can't extend that tripod. And now he's jumping on the table all the time and he's shaking everything. And I want to start reading a comment from one of my users here. And you're just jumping up and down. So get off. Get off. Oh, he's a stubborn dog.